My fellow Americans, I'm pleased to tell you today that I've signed legislation that will outlaw Russia forever. We begin bombing in 5 minutes.
It is essential that our team learns to work with our new recruit, not against him.
I'm a geek, walking down the street.
Check the computer.
The mainframe computer. I access the mainframe.
At the end of this day, one shall stand, one shall fall. Time to find out.
Welcome to Basically a Geek Show. Here are your hosts, Mike and Jack.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Basically a Geek Show 33. As always, I'm Mike, and here's Jack.
Our crusade against the forces of deceit and idiocy continues.
Speaking of idiocy.
We called this one. We fucking called this shit.
What, that Gotham was gonna suck?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I called it. I don't know about you, but
well, you called it. I didn't necessarily disagree. I said my opinion of it was that there was potential, and I was going to wait and see. And I have waited, and I've actually just finished watching the first episode, and yeah, it's, in my opinion, I know I've seen a lot of people online. They said that they liked it. There's some good to be found in it, but is this a show I want to watch week in, week out? No, it's not. No, I cannot, like, if you ask me, Mike, it was the first episode of Gotham any good? No, it wasn't. It was not.
So, now, what about it sucked beyond the mere concept of Batman without Batman? And, of course, this being a stupid fucking idea.
Well, the show starts off weirdly, and this is something that has... This is a problem I can see them running into down the line of this concept, is that Bruce Wayne in the show is, like, 8, right? Like, it starts the night that his parents were killed, and I believe Bruce Wayne's 8 when his parents are killed, so... You start introducing all of these characters who are going to become Batman villains, and there is an obvious age discrepancy. And in some characters, like the Penguin, I'll get to the Penguin in a bit because he's introduced in that pilot, but it works because the Penguin in when it comes to traditional Batman media is depicted as being older, so that works for him. But the first person we see in this show, it's Catwoman. She's got the Catwoman type outfit, and it shows that she's got an affinity for cats. Now, granted, she doesn't actually have any lines, and she really only appears as, like, a stranger in the shadows. Like, she's following young Bruce Wayne around, which is kind of creepy when you stop to think about it.
She's watching him poop.
But, and I don't know. Like, I don't know if this is supposed to be Selina Kyle. But if they come out and they say this is Selina Kyle, then that's going to be a major fucking headache. Because I always kind of pegged Selina Kyle and Bruce Wayne as being around the same age.
Yeah.
And here she looks to be late 20s, early 30s in the show. And Bruce Wayne's 8. So that's a problem. And again, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt on this one because they don't actually say it's Selina Kyle. But if it's not Selina Kyle, then it is a very Catwoman-esque character who's not Catwoman, and that'll be weird in a whole other way. The main problem with the series is stilted dialogue. And maybe this is a problem because it's a new show and it takes actors a while to find their characters and it takes cast members a while to gel. But I think it's more than that. The dialogue is stilted. The delivery in a lot of cases is stiff. There's a distinct lack of chemistry between any of the main characters. And it's that type of dialogue where you just sort of roll your eyes and you're like, this is the type of dialogue that, you know, perhaps it looks fine when you're writing a script, but it's not the way that people actually talk. So you have people speaking in this very unnatural, stilted manner, and it just kind of comes off as eye-roll worthy. The kid who plays Bruce Wayne is he's very, again, he's a child actor. But it's again, and this kind of goes along with the dialogue part, it's one of those cases where they're writing a kid like he's an adult. And it's weird because everyone kind of interacts with him like he's an adult, but he's a kid. So you have this 8-year-old who's like speaking as if he is a 20 or 30-year-old. And it's just really, really it disconnects you from the work, and it kind of just leaves you, you know, like for all the good ideas that they kind of put in the show, you're left thinking, I really don't want to have to put up with this dialogue and these like performances week in, week out.
I gotcha. I don't know. I'm not going to bother watching it because I believe at the time when we were talking about this, I said, you know, I'd wait for you to watch it first. And if you said it was worth a watch, then I would give it 10 minutes to impress me. I don't see any point in me wasting my time with it. I just still maintain my overall feeling that the idea itself is just butt-fucked retarded and just reeks of cash grab. And why the fuck would they want to make this? And why the fuck would anyone want to watch it?
Well, another thing. They introduced a couple characters, one of which is Edward Enigma. He's going to be the Riddler. And Edward Enigma starts off. They don't really clarify what his role is. He works for the Gotham PD. And from what I could gather from his scene, he seems to basically be a CSI type of guy. And here's the problem. It shows that even now he's got a thing for riddles. In fact, one of the main characters says, Edward, just fucking tell us what you know. Stop the goddamn riddles. And so you have to wonder, in like a decade and a half, when Batman becomes a thing and the Riddler becomes a thing, no one's gonna, hey, you know that creepy guy who worked for the Gotham PD who always liked to talk in riddles and now there's a villain called the Riddler? Like, I don't know. It just seems really? It's stupid. They hinted at, there's a scene where a character who owns a nightclub is auditioning stand-up comedians, and a lot of people are saying that the main comedian from that scene is going to be the Joker. Maybe it is. I'm not sure. Could be. Couldn't, maybe not. But, again, there's absolutely nothing to base that off of other than just conjecture, and it could just be the writing staff, screwing with us. So I'm not going to go into that too much. Good parts about it. The saving grace of the show is actually Harvey Bullock, who is Jim Gordon's senior partner.
What, does he just pretty much take it for what it is and obviously zero fucks given and therefore it's enjoyable?
Yeah, in a way. And the character is, I don't know if you're from the Batman animated series, if you remember the Harvey Bullock character.
Very, very vaguely. I actually haven't watched that show since I was a kid, so I don't remember all that well, because I think it was pretty good.
Harvey Bullock is sort of I don't want to say corrupt cop, but he is very much one who is willing to bend the rules in a lot of ways. And Harvey Bullock in the show is presented in such a way that, I don't know, I just found him enjoyable. Maybe it was like maybe his actor was just able to sort of elevate the bad dialogue in a way to make it more entertaining. But Harvey Bullock, I'd say, was the main thing that the show has going for it. The guy who plays Jim Gordon is not he's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. He's just sort of bland, and he's got bland, stilted dialogue that the actor really can't elevate beyond what it is. And he's got no chemistry with the characters who are supposed to be close, and like the character's supposed to be his fiancé. They really don't. There's really no chemistry there. He really doesn't have any chemistry with Bullock, who's supposed to be his partner. He really doesn't have any chemistry with Bruce Wayne, who he's supposed to be bonding with. It's just really blah. Not necessarily bad, just blah.
So would you equate this show more to the small screen equivalent of smallpox or polio?
Chickenpox.
Chickenpox? I got you. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The new show Gotham, as per Mike, worse than cancer. I just don't get these. This is another part of this trend that we've been kind of like talking about a little bit the last couple of weeks, where, you know, they don't know what to do with these franchises except that they want to keep making money off of them. Mm-hmm. So they go with these fucking half-baked origin ideas or prequel ideas, and
I don't know. It's just like
pissing me off.
Okay, like this scene has a scene taken right out of Batman Begins. For those of us who want to take the Wayback Machine to the far off year of 2005, the distant past, to Batman Begins, you might remember the scene where after Bruce Wayne's parents are killed, he's comforted by James Gordon, then played by Gary Oldman, aka Dracula. So there's that, and they kind of almost they kind of reproduce that scene almost line for line, really, in the pilot of the show. But whereas Batman Begins had great atmosphere and fantastic performances from everyone involved, including the child actor who played young Bruce Wayne, the Gotham just. It doesn't flounder. It's not necessarily bad. It's just flat. It lacks all of the emotion and ambiance that the Batman Begins version of that scene had.
So it's a soulless abomination.
Soulless, definitely, yes. Definitely. And
well, I say it's an abomination, and I know more because I haven't seen it. Therefore, you are sheeple.
Uh-huh. Well, speaking of bad ideas, what's the latest news about the third iteration of the rebooted Star Trek film series?
So, evidently, within the last couple of days, a rumor has surfaced that William Shatner will be making a cameo as Kirk in a quote-unquote integral scene in Star Trek 3. Director Robert Orci and William Shatner have, well, Orci hasn't come out and denied it. He's actually gone to say that he will not confirm or deny, and quote unquote, the movie's not the movie until it's in the theater. Shatner has basically just said, well, my phone hasn't rang. So that's the thinking. Now that, you know, of course they had toyed with the idea of having Shatner, you know, be in the first Star Trek movie, and they said they couldn't find a way to make it meaningful, and there were rumors that William Shatner wanted way too much to do with the movie, and they just didn't want him in there, of course, and Shatner denied that that was the case, of course. So, yeah, here we are with this new rumor now that Star Trek 3 will have a scene as Shatner reprising the role of Kirk as like future Kirk or what the fuck ever.
That'll be interesting. Like, what would the I gotta think the first reaction of Chris Pine Kirk would be, God, I get fat.
Yeah, this is the thing. I mean, okay. You know, a lot of the franchise...
And then it just cuts to a scene of Chris Pine, Kirk, and he's like fucking on like the Atkins diet.
Yeah. Young Kirk now becomes anorexic. Fucking bulimic or some shit. Can't end up fat bloated man. Can't end up fat bloated has been. You know, this is the thing, though. Like, okay, on some of the franchises we discuss about, especially like the comic book franchises, you know, my main experience with them is the movies and such and so on and so forth. Now, with Star Trek, though, that's a different bowl of wax altogether. I grew up with the original series through reruns, TNG, I even gave Voyager its due. And
you like Enterprise.
Yeah, and I love Enterprise. It's actually my second favorite series behind TNG.
I'd say DS9's my favorite.
It depends. I mean, DS9 had kind of a weak beginning with a great ending. Mm-hmm. But anyways, enough of that. Well, basically my point here is, look, I've been with this series since, you know, I was old enough to be sat in front of a television. And if anyone should have had a hard time accepting the reboots, it should have been me. But I didn't. And I actually thought the addition of Leonard Nimoy was kind of out of place. That was one of the things that I kind of didn't really like about the original, but they did it in a way to where, like, all right, you know, overall the movie was the better for it. I just kind of thought, let's let that go, because you
wanted it to be its own thing and to kind of be its own entity. Basically.
Right, because the casting and everything was so good. I liked the writing and all this other stuff. It proved itself to me very early on that, you know, this is good. This is a good thing. I went into the movie, of course, being a bit like, I don't know about this. Mm-hmm. But within the first 20 minutes or so, I was sold. I'm like, all right, yeah, I'm on board with this. And I feel like at this point, you know, this is the third movie, possibly the last of this line. And I think to include Shatner at this point, when Nimoy himself probably won't be in it because he's been diagnosed with some kind of lung disease, and he said he just doesn't want to be filming on location anymore. So, I mean, Nimoy himself may not even be able to be in it. And now you're talking about adding William Shatner, and it's kind of like, look, you know, this franchise, this rebooted franchise, has tried very hard to do its own thing and to set itself apart, and it's done so well. Let's not cheapen that.
Well, I think at this point, I mean, if you look at it, in the first movie, I think it would be fair to say that Nimoy's Spock in the first movie had a major role.
Yeah, it did.
In the second movie, Nimoy's Spock shows up in what is essentially a cameo.
Yeah.
Basically, you know, young Spock is like, so, what's the deal with this Khan guy? And Spock's like, you stay the fuck away from Khan.
Yeah. And he's like, I can't tell you how to beat him. Now, take notes. I'm going to tell you how to beat him. And, you know...
But my point being that in that movie, you know, it's essentially a cameo, so you can say that between the first two movies of the series, we've had a trend where the training wheels have slowly come off. You know,
right.
We started with a heavy emphasis on a connection to the original series. We cut that down to a cameo in the second one. The next logical step to me would be a third movie that completely stands on its own 2 feet.
Logically, yes. And, you know, this being so early in the development of this movie, I don't think anything's going to come of this. Mm-hmm. I think between more intelligent heads prevailing and the fact that they're going to once again realize that Bill Shatner is a bit of a douche, I think they're just going to say fuck it and do without him.
I mean, we've heard this rumor before. Okay, let's not even talk about the rebooted series. Let's go back to Enterprise. I remember when Enterprise was on the air, people were saying that, Shatner was going to make an appearance in Enterprise as Kirk. And they were going to and I don't know how the hell they were going to do that, but they were going to work it in somehow. And then obviously that never came to fruition, apparently because Bill Shatner is a douche, and when they started talking to him about it, he started demanding way too much power or money or what have you.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there are rumors that that's what happened in the rebooted series when they talked about including Shatner as Kirk in the first movie of the rebooted series. So it seems to me like, look, at this point, Captain Kirk is a character. I like Captain Kirk. I like William Shatner's Captain Kirk. But let's be honest, Bill Shatner, the person, is kind of a tool.
Yeah, he is. Even though he is a wonderful singing talent, he is a bit of an ass. And I don't know, I think if they end up... Would part of me like to see, old Kirk pop on the screen for a few more minutes? Yeah, I would. But at the same time, I recognize the fact that that time's gone. Mm-hmm. That's not really a feasible thing, and if they end up doing it, I'm afraid it will be to the movie's detriment. Between, them maybe having to try to shoehorn him in there.
I don't even think he can fit in a uniform anymore.
Oh, God. Yeah.
I mean...
Well, I'm sure they'd have a new one made, but,
I'm just saying.
If they can get Omar the Tent Maker's phone number... but I just kind of... I think it's almost defeat a lot of what this rebooted franchise has done. And I know a lot of people have bitched about the reboots and blah, 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 blah.
I'm not going to... I'm going to say right then and there, I stopped listening to people who bitched about the reboots. You want to say that that 20 minutes into the first film, you had a good feeling about it. I won't even say the first 20 minutes. That prologue scene in the first movie that shows what happened, like that shows when Kirk's dad saves everyone?
Yeah, that was pretty fucking awesome.
That scene gave me more characters to care about than the entire film of Insurrection did. Like, I gave more shits in that, 10-minute prologue scene than I did throughout the entire movie of Insurrection. So, look, I'm not hating on TNG, and I'm not hating on, the pre-rebooted Star Trek franchise as a whole. But I think it's very clear that pre-J.J. Abrams, Star Trek as a franchise needed a kick in the ass.
It did. I mean, I'll defend a lot of the older movies that some people said were bad, except Insurrection. Fuck that movie. And Star Trek, the motion picture. Fuck that movie, too. Nemesis, for example, I really liked. There were a few of those where people were like, I thought were pretty good. But no, it did need a kick in the ass. The franchise as a whole needed a kick in the ass. And that's what Abrams gave it. And I don't, people, the internet will bitch about anything and everything given substantial opportunity or even any opportunity to do so. They're just sitting there, literally, I think, waiting for something to bitch about. Mm-hmm. And of course, rebooting something like this, lots of bitch about fodder there. Mm-hmm.
See, in terms of that, I actually thought the writers, I don't know if it was the writers or if it was J.J. Abrams, but whoever came up with the alternate timeline idea, I thought really bent over backwards to try to make it appeal to the people clinging to the old series. Because if it were up to me, I just would have said I would have said, hey, this is a reboot. There are going to be changes because it's a reboot.
Right.
Like, I would have just said, this is the Star Trek version of Batman Begins. Like, there's going to be stuff that's not the same because it's a new series. And I wouldn't have gone that extra step to say, oh, new timeline, because in my opinion, I still think that plot point is unneeded. But, I thought it really showed a sensitivity to a lot of people who would otherwise be mad, and I thought that they sort of went above and beyond the Call of Duty on that, and people still bitched, so.
I think it was actually a smart move, not for that reason, though. Because if they hadn't have done that, then it would have almost made the entire thing pointless to me. Mm-hmm. Because we know what's going to happen. So they literally would have been stuck in making, Star Trek 1, 2, and 3 again.
See, no, not necessarily. Because once you say this is a reboot, like, you don't even have to do an alternate timeline. You just say, hey, this is a reboot. We're rebooting the series. We're taking it back to square one. Once you do that, then you can change anything up that you want. You don't have to remake. You don't have to follow the old stories exactly because, hey, it's a reboot. You can do whatever you want to it. So,
well, true. But I honestly, though, them doing it the way they did kind of, I mean, they sat there and they said, hey, we're working with space-time here. We can do whatever the fuck we want. So let's find a way to link them. And they did. And I think it worked well. I'm still glad that they did it that way. Because then you can wonder kind of like along the lines of cause and effect. What else can end up happening? I mean, you already seen the vengeance in Star Trek 2, where they, or Into Darkness or what the fuck ever, where they took the technology from Nero's ship and like, oh my god, Enterprise on steroids and all this other shit. And, so I mean, it opens the door for cool shit like that to be done. Mm-hmm. And, yeah, I still think they should have saved that ship and made it the new Enterprise.
Oh, the Vengeance?
Yes.
Yeah, well, they were also trying to push the idea of, like, a big part of that movie was we can't allow Star fleets to become militarized, and the Vengeance was very much a militarized ship, so I think that was, like, they couldn't allow it to live. They couldn't allow it to survive that movie because of that? I don't know.
Though, just kind of going into the lore here a little bit, Starfleet needs to be militarized because, goddamn, half the time they end up getting shot at.
Well, see, that's a different, like, okay, Gene Roddenberry's whole thing was,
right.
It's not a military, and, I liken Gene Roddenberry to George Lucas, actually, in that, they were great when it came to big ideas and concepts and when it came to creating worlds, great writers. But when it came to, like, smaller details and when it came to, them knowing what the audience wanted, they both, like, crap their pants. And,
yeah.
Not to get into a big political thing, but Roddenberry's overly utopian, pacifistic and, well, let's be honest about it, socialist view of the Federation and of Starfleet was simply nonsense because let's look at what the Federation. Let's look at the Federation. Starfleet is the only organization in the Federation that has interstellar starships that have defensive capabilities, and it is the force deployed in the event of a military situation. Gene Roddenberry could protest all day that Starfleet is not a military. No, it's a military.
Right. I mean, yeah, there's no logical train of thought there for this Federation to not have a military wing, even if as his vision outlaid that humanity's mental state has evolved to the point where there's no wars, there's no this, and everything's hunky fucking dory, and we're all a goddamn Norman Rockwell fucking painting. That still doesn't excuse the fact that people would realize that, hey, we might be peaceful, but all these other motherfuckers that are surrounding us are not. We got
the entire Klingon cultural identity is about warfare.
Right, so even if they just had a mothballed military fleet that they only brought out in times of war, they would at least have that. I mean, there would need to be a military wing of Starfleet, if not Starfleet itself being militarized. There would have to be, very, capable, defensive military craft, for that reason. And I think, towards the end of TNG after Roddenberry passed, and you and I have said our thoughts on that before, you started to see where, for one thing, the Galaxy class was very capable in combat, and they said it ended up being just a really retardedly designed military ship because you have all these families on board, and yet this thing can fucking
that's the thing.
Damn near punch a hole in a moon.
When the show started, when Gene was still calling the shots, he was like, "It's not a military," so like you had like families on board, and it looked like a futuristic mall. And
yet they just end up becoming the most irresponsible organization in history for taking these families, of which many of whom have small children, into getting shot at and fucking assimilated by the goddamn Borg. But it's not a military. We just like taking children in harm's way for shiggles.
We've got a ship full of kindergartners. Number 1, engage the Borg.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean.
And it's like, you look at the bridge and they're all determined and steel-eyed. Like, you look at like the weeping mother 3 decks down clutching her children as the Borg is nut punching the Enterprise.
What you end up with is the equivalent of a fucking, a cruise ship armed with missiles.
Yeah.
And if fucking Royal Caribbean wandered around fucking bombing Iraq and shit, well, it's not a military ship.
Well, I mean, well, let's also look at it. Gene Roddenberry, heavy influence in Star Trek 1. He de-emphasized the military aspect of it. Star Trek 1 sucked.
Yeah, except no one stayed awake long enough to remember it.
But once, from Star Trek 2 through 6, Roddenberry was off those films. Like, he was promoted out of the, they promoted him away from the movies, basically.
The Gilbert principle.
Exactly. So, when you got Harv Bennett, who came on and was the creative force behind Star Treks 2 through 6, he said, I want Starfleet to have a military feel, and those films were, very well received by the populace. So, I think it's just like, most people recognize that Starfleet is a military, and it will have non-military functions such as exploration. But I think when you go out, when you try to make a point that it's not a military, it just comes off as silly, because it has all the trappings of one, and your general audience member isn't stupid. He recognizes those trappings as being militaristic in nature. So when they're like, no, we're not a military, he's bound to go, well, this is fucking stupid because you obviously are.
Right, exactly. I mean, and even using the modern day United States Navy as, an analog here, the U.S. Navy does scientific research with warships. So, I mean, military vessels can do both, but, of course the U.S. isn't going to say, we don't have a Navy. Goddamn we do. And it'll whoop all of you put together. And, that whole thing, that was the one thing I did not like about Star Trek Into Darkness, because Peter Weller's character had some good points. I mean, okay, did he go about it a bit bad? Yeah.
Yeah, but we see the Klingons, we know that there's gonna be, his whole thing was, we need to prepare Starfleet for the eventual war against the Klingons, and I guarantee you the Klingons are going to start a war sooner or later, cause they're Klingons.
Now, should the Federation go ahead and start it preemptively? No, not necessarily, but yeah, Admiral RoboCop has a few good ideas. Yeah. I mean, you got fucking whatever insert generic Klingon name here is sitting over there fucking drinking human blood out of a skull. Maybe we ought to get some guns, guys.
I actually am kind of hoping we get a Klingon war story in Star Trek 3, if only because that Prelude to Axanar fan-produced project that we talked about last week, that really kind of got me in the mood for that sort of story.
Yeah, and I've always wanted to see more of that, and evidently, glad to see I'm not the only one, because there's all these, like, if you read a lot of the lore of Star Trek, you read about these really cool wars that you never see.
Well, there's the 4 Years' War of the Klingons, there's the Earth-Romulan War.
Yeah, which was basically just a nuclear war fought in space. And I would have loved to have seen that one as well.
Well, apparently that was, like, if you go back to the last 2 episodes of Star Trek Enterprise, there's actually, like, a 10-year gap between the second-to-last Enterprise episode and the last Enterprise episode. And in that gap is when the Earth-Romulan War happens. And apparently the plan was, after Enterprise ended, was to go back and do an Enterprise movie based on the Earth-Romulan War to fill in that gap, but Nemesis bombed so hard at the box office that Paramount was like, nope, no more Star Trek films, like, take it back to square one and fix it.
Yeah, which, I mean, in retrospect, yeah, I would have loved to have seen that movie made, or at least, a couple of installments of Enterprise focusing on it, just because I love the idea of starships flinging nukes. I think that's just awesome.
Well, that's something that Battlestar Galactica gave us.
Yeah, we got our fix on that, but, wow, we really wandered away there, but, so yeah, there's that.
Again, I won't believe Shatner is in this until I see him in a trailer, just because I think the whole idea of bringing Shatner back is something that a lot of people like the idea of until you actually start talking to Bill Shatner.
Yeah.
And then realize it might not be the best idea.
I think this idea, if this is actually something they're talking about pursuing, I don't think it's going to come to realization for a number of reasons, not leastly, of course, being Bill Shatner himself. And I think the idea itself is bad. Just because I don't think it's what this series needs anymore. I don't think it really ever needed it, to be honest with you. Now, I can see them playing it safe in the first installment, which they did. They didn't know how it would be received, but it's been fairly well received, enough so, for them to sign for a trilogy. It's not necessary anymore. Let's just let this new series stand on its own. It's doing a good job of it. Let it keep going. Let's leave the past where it is.
Indeed. Now, but speaking of movies that you have a keen interest in, you've got an interest in the Deadpool character.
Yes.
And we've speculated about a Deadpool movie before. Something I said a few episodes back, it was pointed out by a listener that it was correct that Fox does have the rights to the character as far as movies go.
Yes.
And, they have released, actually, Deadpool concept footage with Ryan Reynolds portraying the role, at least providing his voice. We don't see him outside of the costume, so it's likely a stunt person in there, but the voice is Ryan Reynolds, and Ryan Reynolds has signed on for it, and it is happening. We are getting a Deadpool movie.
I am always right.
So, one of the things a lot of people freaked out was that Fox announced that it was going to be PG-13.
Yeah.
But see, I'm not too worried about that. Because, well, first there's the financial fact of the matter. And that is that you're going to get more people to see a PG-13 movie than you are a rated R movie, because you've got to hit that 13 to 16 demographic, because that's where the money is, because there are a bunch of kids with completely disposable income.
They could still do that with rated R. Let's face it.
They could, but it would be a harder sell. PG-13, you're guaranteed those viewers.
Yeah, I would prefer them to do this as R-rated, because if you're gonna take the restraints off of any character, Deadpool's the one you need to do it with, even more so than Wolverine. Though I think honestly Wolverine would do best in a rated R movie, to tell you the truth.
Probably.
But they do okay with him as it is. Deadpool though especially, a lot more profane, a lot more crude.
I do want to point out, though, that, and this is something that even I've noticed over my lifetime, that that what qualifies as that stuff that gets labeled PG-13 today, 15 years ago would have been R.
Yeah.
So when you say a Deadpool movie is going to be PG-13, in my mind, I still think, well, okay. You could still do, like, considering what passes for PG-13 today, you can do enough for Deadpool in that context.
We'll see. I mean, this is one of those that, with that, with Ryan Reynolds signing on to it and everything, I think there's a good enough of a shot there for this to be good. And this is going to be one of those where, I'll see when it comes out. I'm concerned about the PG-13 thing. I'm not, of course, I'm not going to go so far to discount it because of that. I think there's still a lot they can do there with it. And we'll just, see how it turns out. I'm glad they're finally getting their head out of their ass and making this happen, though. Well, I figured they would eventually because, there's only so much they can do with fucking X-Men.
Well, yeah. And I think Deadpool, kind of, at least as far as the corporate end of things go, is considered part of the X-Men family of heroes because his backstory is tied directly into Wolverine.
Right.
So I think that's why Fox has it. But the good news about that is that Deadpool, even though he may have started off as part of the X-Men, has sort of developed his own sort of franchise, and because of that, Fox they're able to get just another potential franchise out of it. The test footage, from what I saw, looks very on par to what the character is supposed to be. It looks like whoever wrote that particular short had a good grasp of the character. My only concern is that, okay, Deadpool is very self-referential and absolutely demolishes the fourth wall. My only concern is that it might not work over the course of a full 2-hour movie. Like, it might be something that works great in a short, like that test footage. It might be something that fans the character, of which I would consider myself one. It might be something that, we could find enjoyable over the course of 2 hours. But I'm just going to say it, and you can take this as a warning if you want, because it very much is. A Deadpool movie would be so unlike every other superhero movie out there that my concern is that when audiences go to see it, they'll react negatively just because it's maybe not what they're expecting.
Well, there's only one way to find out, and that's to do it. In terms of it being unlike the other superhero movies out there, as superhero movies seem to be trending at the moment, I think that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. I think the genre or the subgenre is becoming kind of high on its own farts. Victims of its own success, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And a movie like this, I think they could do good with it if they do it right. It's tricky to, of course it's going to be tricky to do it correctly in a way that doesn't make the fans sick of it and alienate non-fans. But, maybe if they just kind of almost approach it as somewhat of a parody of superhero movies in general, mm-hmm. I think they could do really well with it. I don't think the fourth wall breaking is that much of an issue. I've never had a problem with that if the tone of the movie, conduces itself to it. And, of course, the tone of this movie would have to. And I don't think it'd be that hard for them to pull off if they had the right writers. They've got the right actor. Now they just have the correct writing team for it. Then I think it could pull itself off pretty good.
Now the question is, do they work the abysmal Wolverine origins Deadpool into his backstory? Like, do they try to salvage that depiction of the character? Or do they just try to forget that movie happened?
I think if they're smart, they'll just forget that ever fucking happened.
Mm-hmm. That's probably it's probably not the worst idea. I have a feeling Fox is going to do that in general, considering that they've already got a different actor to play Gambit in the next X-Men movie, so I think they're already kind of moving on from that. I guess the only real thing with Deadpool, kind of going forward then, is this something that, okay, let's say we can make it work for 2 hours. Is this something that you want to see a full series out of, like a trilogy? Or is this maybe something that should only be a one movie kind of deal, kind of a singular entity?
That's something that I'm less optimistic about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure that if they had a good writing team and a good director, that the intro movie they can pull off pretty good. Mm-hmm. A series, I'm not so sure about for that reason.
Mm-hmm. Well, of course, the question is because in the comics, Deadpool, of course, has a bit of a rivalry with Wolverine, which is kind of funny, considering it's mostly funny when it comes down to the fact that Deadpool realizes he's a comic book character, whereas Wolverine doesn't. But I don't know. I guess I'd be okay with a second movie if they use that as an opportunity to throw Hugh Jackman in there and just have a Wolverine Deadpool movie. But Deadpool, as far as being a standalone film, in my opinion, I think it has to be just one movie. Like, don't make a series out of it. Just have it be this one unique entity that kind of came in, shook up the formula, and left.
Yeah, or if they end up doing a series of it, I think you'll probably see it being a lot more sparingly, a lot less frequently introduced than some of the others. You're not going to see it like the X-Men movies where they pop out one every couple of years. Mm. I think they'll see how the first one does, and then maybe 3 or 4 years later you might see another one. Though I kind of agree with you. I think this would actually work best as a one-off. As much as I hate to say it, I do think if that one is good enough, then that's all they need. Mm. I think they can get at least one really good movie out of this, which could be, a really good satire kind of a piece about, superhero movies in general. Let that kind of stand out in this flood of, Batman v Superman and Avengers 2 and 3 and all this other stuff, which I am now pretty much lumping Avengers 2 in with Batman v Superman in that regard.
You haven't been a fan of Avengers 2 since they announced it was going to be Ultron.
I haven't, no, but it's more than just that now. It's more than me just saying, that's a shitty villain. It's still a shitty villain, mind you. But now they've gotten in that same territory that Batman versus Superman is in, where they're just cramming it. They're cramming superheroes up this movie's ass. Mm-hmm. And it's just, so many that it's going to kind of deter from the overall impact, I think. Mm.
Indeed. So, let's switch gears here, and we're going to go back to our good friends at Blizzard Entertainment.
Indeed, lots of stuff happening in that regard.
So, as far as I've been playing WoW, and I'm unsure of when they first announced this project, but I know it must have been at least before 2008, because I started playing World of Warcraft in 2008, and from, like, my first day playing it, I knew that they had this project that they weren't talking about. People only knew it by a code name Titan. And apparently, and all we knew was that it was going to be Blizzard's next big thing, and that it would revolutionize the MMO genre of game. The MMO RPG would be revolutionized. It wouldn't just be another standard MMO. It would be something else entirely. They wouldn't tell us what it was, but I think the biggest rumor I heard was that it was going to be a first-person shooter MMO.
Yeah, like a first-person sci-fi Destiny.
But
basically,
Destiny essentially, but which looks interesting in its own right. But those were the rumors. It would be a first-person shooter, sci-fi MMO. Of course, none of this is confirmed. But about a year ago, they announced that they were basically scrapping everything that they had done on it and starting from scratch. And that was a year ago. And now, breaking news actually, just in the last 24 hours, they have announced that Titan is canceled. Not taken back to square one, not being reworked again. No, they're just canceling it.
Which, I kind of figured this wasn't going to be far away when they said they were resetting it, basically. I mean, for Blizzard to do that, okay, you know for one thing that when a project is taking as long as Titan was, which, again, since 2008, they've been, at least since then, they'd been working on this, and they still didn't have anything. Not an announcement, not, any leaked concept art, nothing, not one single thing concrete was ever divulged about this over the course of, from 2008 until when they announced that they were, resetting the project. That tells you something is wrong. I mean, for Blizzard to be dumping, all this time into, creating whatever this was, and not get anything concrete to show for it in almost a decade, that's not good. Well, not quite almost a decade. I mean, about 5-6 years, though.
Now, what's interesting is that you mentioned Destiny.
Yeah.
The video game coming out. And you're right. A lot of what people speculated that Titan would be seems to have manifested itself in Destiny. Destiny is a first-person, open-world MMO science fiction game.
Yes.
And interestingly enough, Destiny is being published by Activision. Activision is the parent company of Blizzard.
Yep.
So, could this be a situation where whatever assets were developed for Titan were simply repurposed into Destiny, and then that was just sort of spun off as its own game?
Personally, I kind of think so. I really do. The similarities are so... Well, of course, I mean, then again, a first-person shooter MMO sci-fi setting kind of a thing, I mean, that's fairly generic enough to where, I mean, you could almost apply that to anything of the sort. But the thing is, the idea is generic, and it's the way it sounds, but we really haven't seen any others except Destiny. I personally do think that there was some corroboration there between Blizzard and Bungie, and that what we ended up with is Destiny, which, depending on who you talk to, is either the greatest thing since sliced bread or a prime example of what's wrong with the video game industry today. But I think that game does have probably some of the assets, or at least ideas and concepts from Titan.
Mm-hmm.
Though, I mean, this is good news for WoW. I mean, I think kind of almost what happened here was Blizzard realized that people are happy with WoW for the most part. It's not going anywhere.
I mean, let's face it, WoW has lost around half of its subscription base since its high point, and it's still, by far, the most popular MMORPG out there.
Yeah. And I think maybe, when they first started, working on Titan or first came up with the idea for it, that they had perhaps been under the impression of, this would be WoW's successor, or this would be a companion game. Not companion in terms of the same universe, but something on the books, a second MMO on their books, to where if something happened with WoW and it bit the dust, they would still have something there generating a revenue stream in the MMO genre. And also, I think Blizzard realized how hard it is for them to mimic themselves. They wanted to revolutionize the MMO genre, something that they themselves pretty much create. Well, I won't say they created it. EverQuest and Rift and all that, I think were around first. But WoW did revolutionize the MMO genre. And I think they realized how little they left undone with WoW, and that anything that they'd want to do, they could pretty much do with World of Warcraft if they wanted to.
Mm-hmm. The thing that really struck me was the fact that Tom Chilton, he was one of the top guys at Blizzard Entertainment. He was doing a series of interviews at a bunch of conventions, hyping Warlords of Draenor, the latest World of Warcraft expansion. And he mentioned that they had around 6 expansion ideas lined up for following Warlords of Draenor.
Yeah.
So, and you got to think, if they've already got 6 ideas, good to go, then they are obviously not planning on ending WoW anytime soon. So maybe that was a decision that was arrived to at the same time. Like, hey, Titan, for whatever reason, isn't working out. Maybe they couldn't figure out what they wanted to do with it, or maybe it was simply, maybe, our theory's correct. Maybe it was simply repurposed into Destiny. That's always, again, I think that's incredibly likely, just given the similarities between Destiny and what we were kind of, what we all thought Titan would be. So, when you think about it, I don't know, the timing just seems the timing really seems to come into focus, where they kind of make this decision to go ahead with sort of keeping WoW around for at least 6 more expansions, and then that kind of coincides with them saying, you know what, we're done with Titan. I think they came to the conclusion that WoW wasn't going away anytime soon, and that because of that, there was no need to try to make Titan happen. I guess. There was no pressing need to make Titan a thing.
That, and I think, it's also mentioned in terms of their reasoning for canceling Titan, that they couldn't seem to find the same passion for the idea that they had for WoW, and that they realized that they don't always necessarily have to be working on some huge monstrous project. And this was, they said, demonstrated to them by the reception received by Hearthstone and Heroes of the Storm.
Well, the thing about WoW,
I think, yeah.
Now, the thing about WoW, though, is that I think Warcraft 1, Orcs vs. Humans, was one of, if not Blizzard's first games. No. I don't recall what Blizzard's first game was, but I mean, Blizzard was releasing games on the Super Nintendo. Oh, were they?
Yeah, Rock and Roll Racing, Lost Vikings, Blackthorn, I think at least maybe 1 or 2 others, but those were the 3 that I know of that were released on Super Nintendo in the mid-90s, that were Blizzard productions.
I guess my point, though, is that Warcraft 1 Orcs vs. Humans is sort of a early mid-90s game.
Yes.
And a lot of the people, the creative staff who are at Blizzard today were around back then. And so for them, Warcraft is sort of a world that has always been with them. It's something that's been constantly changing and evolving for decades now at this point. So, I can understand why they'd have a passion for the Warcraft universe. It's something that has been a part of their professional careers for the better part of 2 decades now. Whereas Titan, and again, we don't know what the story was in Titan, but apparently it was going to be unconnected. It was going to be completely unconnected from anything else that they had done. So I can definitely understand why it would be harder to work up the passion for a new kind of universe you're creating from scratch compared to a universe that you've had an active hand in molding over, 2 decades.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a combination of that, and maybe at the time, doing something fresh and different seemed like a good idea, and they were kind of into it, and then just as it went on, the idea kind of just grew lukewarm with them, and they're like, It literally seems to be a case of, we don't want to do this anymore. That, and it seemed like they were having, just like I said, from how long it was taking them to get anything out, it seemed like it wasn't, they were having problems. Of course, now, Diablo 3, for example, though, you're looking at almost a 10-year gap between Diablo 2 and 3. Mm-hmm. So, long turnaround times aren't something unheard of with Blizzard. Content drought, but,
I guess, and another thing that's interesting about this is that there is a conspiracy, I guess I call it conspiracy theory, amongst certain members of the WoW community that around halfway through Lich King, when Titan as a project was really picking up steam, that a lot of the top tier writers on Blizzard's end were transferred to Titan. And it's been a claim that by some that a lot of the controversial and less than popular moves that they've made since halfway through Lich King have been the result of WoW not getting Blizzard's full attention because they were working on Titan. So is it possible that we could see the return of some really kick-ass Warcraft stories now that Titan has officially been canceled? It's done. They're not going to waste any more time on it.
Well, you got to keep in mind, most of those people have already been taken off that project. Mm-hmm. Have been for months now. So any benefit we're going to see from that, we're already starting to see with Draenor and the end of Pandaria. Mm-hmm. Now, Rob Pardo, who I believe, he was one of the guys that originally was one of the fathers of World of Warcraft and Warcraft in general. I believe he was one of the ones that they had taken over and put on Titan. Mm-hmm. And then, several months ago, he came back to WoW. And then a few months later, he resigned. How many others? I don't know. That's the first thing that pops into my head.
Well, did he give a reason for his resignation?
No. No, he did not. There was no reason given that I recall. But the thing is, basically, I guess what I'm saying is that pretty much most of the talent that had been on Titan and has already been within the last year moved over to WoW. So I think, that's another sign that to me just kind of reaffirms Blizzard's commitment to World of Warcraft. And I think that's probably part of the reason why they have 6 expansions planned out. Now, how long it will take them to do these expansions, God only knows. Again, their aim is for a 1-year development cycle. They seem to be more serious with Draenor to never let content drought happen again by even being so bold as to say, hey, there may only be 2 patches this expansion. Mm-hmm. We've already got the next one well underway. which I would like to maybe see an announcement of that at BlizzCon. I think that'd be pretty fucking awesome. But, we'll see what happens. I think the long and the short of this is they realize MMO-wise, WoW is what they've got, but that's all they really need. Mm-hmm. And any extra revenue and everything, they can develop other games that are well received. Hearthstone, Heroes of the Storm, they can generate that revenue. Those are their extra franchises. They can find new and innovative ways to repurpose existing universes as opposed to coming up with something new. Mm-hmm. Why innovate when you can resuscitate? Mm.
And again, with WoW still proven to be very profitable, I guess there's simply no incentive to try to replace it. So,
yeah, exactly.
But speaking of World of Warcraft, we've got maybe our first big glut of news since the last glut of news, when Blizzard out of nowhere just said, here are a bunch of in-game cinematics, as well as the the second to last episode of Lords of War. I want to talk about Lords of War first, then we'll cycle back to the cinematics. The fourth episode of Lords of War was released, focusing on Kilrog Deadeye, the orc chieftain of I think it's the Bleeding Hollow clan is his clan, and one of the main characters of Warlords of Draenor. I guess my first question to you would be, what did you think of that Lords of War episode, kind of just giving us a look at Kilrog Deadeye's backstory?
Ugh, eyeballs.
Yeah, you've got a thing with eyes.
Yeah.
And that clan's whole thing is that, potential chieftains have to pluck out their own eye to see the future or something. I got to admit, when it comes to World of Warcraft orc lore, I'm either really into it or I don't give a shit at all. And I never gave a crap about Kilrog Deadeye, so, I can appreciate what they were trying to do with that episode, but it wasn't a character I care about, wasn't a clan I care about, wasn't a story I cared about. He's just not an orc that I have any desire to really, connect with, for lack of a better term.
He seems to be just kind of like there, mm-hmm. And I know, like, the entire purpose of this Lords of War thing is to, show us why we should care about, the guys we're going to fight. And that's cool. I like these little short stories they're doing. I think they're pretty cool. I still think this is better done by showing it in game, though. Wrath of the Lich King. Arthas, man, that sumbitch was always there talking shit to you. Mm-hmm. You're weak. I will take over the world, and your mother never liked you. That kind of shit. And they really dropped the ball on that in Cataclysm.
Deathwing in Cataclysm never really had the same sort of presence. I mean, they built him up as this world-destroying monster, but all he did was show up in a few random zones.
And, do flyby shootings at people, which there was an achievement for that, by the way.
Yes, there was. If Deathwing killed you, you got an achievement.
I never got that. I'm disappointed.
I did, actually.
Fuck you, asshole.
He strafed Westfall while I was there, and so...
Now, did you actually see him?
I did not see him, but things got really fiery and I died, so...
So it makes me wonder if they ever actually, had the Deathwing character, flying over the area, or if they just randomly had that happen and no one ever seen him because there really wasn't one, and you just got flamed and boom, you're dead. Congrats, you were killed by Deathwing.
I think he was in. He probably just, he snuck up from behind or something. But, I mean, yeah, Deathwing didn't really have the same kind of presence in Cataclysm that Arthas had in Lich King. But I think another big part of this Lords of War thing is to get newer players, people who aren't perhaps, because a lot of these characters in Lords of War, their deaths predate the launch of WoW. So, in the lore. So, it's a means to get people who have only been playing since WoW caught up, so people who are asking, well, who is Kilrog Deadeye? Well, here, now you know who Kilrog Deadeye is. Because, I'm trying to think. The 4 that they've done, there's Grom, Duratan, Kargath, and Kilrog. And 3 of those 4 were dead before the launch of WoW. And Kargath was a raid boss in the first patch of BC, Burning Crusade. So he was off pretty quickly. So I think this is a means to get people caught up. So, even if you don't know who these older characters are, here's a series dedicated to it. And I think that's more the point of it than anything else.
Yeah, and it does a good job of explaining, of course, who Kilrog Deadeye is. I still didn't really find myself caring all that much. I mean, he's like, he doesn't even, I guess you could say because he killed his father, he's a bastard. But
I mean, he kind of does, but his dad didn't actually seem all that upset about it, because his dad was like,
I knew you'd do that.
Well, because the whole thing is that, like, the chieftains of this clan get a vision of their own deaths when they pluck out their eyeballs. So his dad was like, I knew this was coming, and he didn't seem all that broken up about it, so...
I mean, basically in this culture, in their culture, that's a perfectly acceptable thing to do. So, I mean, you really can't say he's a bastard.
Which is why they're savages and...
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, I mean, they're orcs, that goes without saying. But it doesn't really make you want to go kick his ass necessarily. He just seems kind of like... He's just sort of there, Well, again, it was cool. It just didn't it's nice to have the lore and the backstory and everything, but it didn't really make me think, oh my god, we gotta go kill him.
Well, I guess I've got 2 more questions. My first would be, which has been your favorite of the Lords of War episodes so far?
I'd say the one about Gramash.
Yeah, that one was pretty cool. I don't have the same love of Gramash Hellscream that a lot of WoW fans seem to, but I enjoyed his Lords of War. But okay, my next question is, what do you think the last episode's gonna be? Because there are 5 episodes listed, but they only announced 4 Warlords, and they've already done the first 4.
I'm hoping it'll be Blackhand.
Me too. Blackhand is my favorite orc character, and it seems really stupid that he hasn't gotten one for a couple reasons. One, Blackhand is going to be the boss of the first raid of the expansion. So, he's got, if nothing else, you might want to lay down some story about why people should care. But more importantly, this is being framed as Murad telling Varian what he knows about the orc warlords. And we touched on this a few weeks back. In the original timeline, in the main Warcraft universe, Blackhand was the first war chief of the Horde who sacked Stormwind, which is Varian's kingdom, when Varian was only a kid.
Right.
So... And on top of that, Murad is a Draenei. Blackhand was the war chief of the Horde when the Horde slaughtered the Draenei. So you'd think that 1, Murad would know a lot about him, and 2, Varian would want to know a lot about him. And it just seems odd that, Varian wouldn't ask about the guy who basically destroyed his kingdom the first time around.
Yeah.
And by the way, suck it, Garrosh fans. When it comes to sacking Stormwind, Blackhand 1, Garrosh Hellscream 0.
Yeah, Blackhand is at least competent enough to, win a war, and not turn on his own army.
Yes.
Just saying. But yeah, I mean, from the standpoint in the way that these shorts are framed, Varian having had his home city sacked by Blackhand, would definitely want to know hey, what's up with the fucker with the flaming shirt?
Yeah.
So for that reason, I would like to see the last one be about Black Hand. Like you said, he's going to be a raid boss, but that also may be a reason why they won't do it in the Lords of War. Maybe they're going to have enough in game to set that up and frame that for everybody. Though it probably won't have quite the same context as the Lords of War shorts have had, and I think that would be a pretty good medium for them to. Of all of these, that one itself lends itself the most naturally to that. Woohoo! You may need to edit there. I just threw my lighter across the room accidentally. But you need to, I lost my train of thought there. But yeah, with him having Sack Stormwind and that kind of like being the format of these shorts about these various orcs, it lends itself the most naturally of all of these to that format.
Indeed. Now, here's the thing, though. They've kept it secret. They announced they were only going to be doing 4, Kargath, Grom, Duratan, Kilrog. And we've had those 4. And there's a secret 5th video that Blizzard hasn't announced what it's going to be. If it was just going to be, though, another orc, if it was just going to be Blackhand, for example, why not just say we're doing 5 and include Blackhand in that initial list? That seems to have gotten, a lot of people speculating that maybe the 5th Lords of War episode is going to be something. It's not going to be as standard as here's another orc and his backstory. That's going to be something else. So, do you have any theories on what that could be?
I still think it'll be Blackhand. And I think, you saying that reminds me of during Pandaria, when everyone's like, oh my god, who's going to be the new war chief? And it turned out to be Vol'jin.
The guy that everyone thought would be war chief.
The guy that everyone thought would be war chief. And Blizzard's like, well, oh my god, Blizzard, what the fuck? You said it wasn't who we were going to be expecting, and we totally expected Vol'jin. And Blizzard's like, well, yeah, we said that like 2 years ago, when you wouldn't have expected Vol'jin. We gave him a book, for fuck's sakes, you idiots. Of course he's going to be war chief. And I kind of think that that's kind of what's happening here to a degree. I think them saying, oh, it's going to, you're not going to know who it is. I think the reasoning is maybe as simple as they didn't even know at the time, perhaps. They couldn't decide which one to do it on, or they just said it just for hype reasons to get people to watch and anticipate. I don't think it's going to be anything all that special and unexpected.
We've had some people saying it could actually be a Draenei-focused episode. Because
maybe?
The Draenei, of course, also from Draenor, are going to be a heavy focus, and maybe they're going to use this last episode to get people caught up on the Draenei.
Maybe. I don't know. It could be Uriel.
That is a possibility. Although, the thing about that, though, is that she isn't anyone special, necessarily, at first. I don't know.
Well, true. That is true. Maybe not then. I don't know. I'm just going to stick with the safe bet of it probably being, if not Black. I hope it's not Gul'dan. We know enough about him already.
Yeah, they've told his story ad nauseum. It's.
I mean, nothing against Gul'dan. He's kind of cool as a villain, but I just don't. I don't think we need more lore about Gul'dan. I think we pretty much already know.
Yeah,
what the score is there.
We know his deal.
I mean, everything you need to know about Gul'dan. I mean, if you're sitting there like, hey, no, I don't play well. I don't know about Gul'dan. If you watch the Warlords of Draenor, like the intro cinematic, he's the guy with the fell Kool-Aid. That's all you need to know.
He's the Palpatine-looking motherfucker.
Yeah, it's really all you need to know about Gul'dan.
Basically, he's the Palpatine-looking orc who's all like, drink. And again, it all makes me wonder how anyone fell for this in the main timeline when they did drink the fell Kool-Aid. Because, who looked at Gul'dan with his Palpatine robes being like, drink?
Seems legit.
Who saw that what orc saw that and was like, well, this looks above board?
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, they're not the brightest bulbs on the tree. But yeah, again, I hope it's not Gul'dan, because that'd just be kind of a waste. I'm thinking Black Hand, because he's an orc that, is one of the central enemies of the expansion. He's high profile in the lore, but not as overexposed as like Gul'dan or something like that, someone like that. He's definitely one of the ones that could use a little bit of, explanation and some explanation as to, why we want to see him not do the whole breathing thing anymore.
What about Orgrim Doomhammer? It's just a thought I just had right now.
Maybe, because my first thought was, well, what about him? But, maybe that's a reason why they would want to do one on him.
Well, let's splinter that off. Let's talk about these cinematics, these in-game cinematics. These cinematics are not in the beta. Anytime that one would happen, basically Blizzard just flashes on screen. Cool, in-game event happens here.
Yeah, insert cinematic here, basically, is what it says. Or it actually literally says like cinematic not ready or some shit like that, but yeah. Blizzard
had said that they wanted to keep it secret to avoid spoilers, but then they released all of them, at least up through the content that'll be available at launch. Basically they said people were going to data mine this stuff anyway, so we might as well just give it to you all now.
Yeah.
And
if you want to watch it, you can watch it. If not, whatever. Basically was their standpoint.
And we watched all of them.
Yes.
Two of them right off the bat, I don't want to spend too much time on because it's basically just the Garrison upgrade cinematics.
Right, yeah.
And there's a Horde version, there's an Alliance version, and they're basically the same in each one. It's like your Garrison getting upgraded, and then at for the stage 3 Garrison, Vol'jin shows up for the Horde, and Varian shows up for the Alliance and promotes you to General.
Which I hope is an in-game title.
It should be. It should be. And be all like, Grom, you magnificent bastard, I read your book!
Indeed.
But, so those are the Garrison ones. Not much to say there. Let's start, though, from the ones that actually do matter. Let's start from the beginning. The Dark Portal intro and outro. What did you think of the intro one?
It was okay. I mean, they were all cool to a degree. Some more so than others. Mm-hmm. Most of them just kind of gave me this, like, that's a thing kind of a vibe. And the Dark Portal intro and outro were one of those. They were very cool. Of course, you had Khadgar there being all Khadgar. They were pretty standard, I guess you could say.
Well, what I liked about all of them in general, and we see this in the Dark Portal intro, is that Murad, I think he uses exorcism or judgment, but basically, and this seems to be a thing that they were only doing with the Paladin characters, but they were actually using in-game abilities in the cinematics. Yeah. And I thought that was really cool. In the Battle of Shatrath finale, the Talador one, we see a couple of those. We see Uriel using Avenging Wrath, and we see her also using Redemption on Duratan, and I think we see Murad bubble her at the beginning of it. So I thought it was really cool to show, like, because one of my alts is a paladin. I know your main is a paladin.
Yeah.
It's cool to see, like, abilities that you use in game actually used in the cinematics. It just seems to connect the two more firmly, I think.
It does. And yeah, it is good to see those things, put in the game where it's pretty rare where you actually see, like, in a cinematic, the main characters, doing anything at all that you can actually do in game. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of a nice change in that respect. Yeah, definitely.
In the, moving on, from that, then there's the Frostfire Ridge finale and the Shadow Moon Valley, and those are the Horde and Alliance, those mirror each other in a bit. because Frostfire Ridge being the first Horde zone in the expansion, Shadow Moon Valley being the first Alliance zone. So, I guess the one, because we both play Alliance, let's start with the Horde one, because I think we'll have the least to say about that. It seems as if we got Drekthar, who is like the elder shaman of the Frostwolf clan, and they've got to give him time to do something. But I just thought, but he's blind, and they've given him the job of hurling lightning bolts.
Yeah, probably not the best allocation of strategic resources.
That seems like it could go wrong. Because you got, Stevie Wonder up there, hurling lightning bolts, and I don't know, lots of ways that could go wrong.
Definitely. Yeah, is anybody getting healed? Kind of can't see what I'm doing. I'm just going to throw things where I hear people screaming. So, yeah, probably not their best strategic decision, but it seems to work well enough. Things happen in the cinematic, and things die. Bad things die, evidently, while the good things don't, quote-unquote good. And that's kind of all there is with that.
There's a bit more. We see Gunnar, Durotan's brother, who basically... The gist of it is that Gunnar is actually older than Durotan, and I'm not sure how it happened, but somehow, essentially, Durotan becomes a chieftain of the Frostwolf clan, and Gunnar doesn't. And I haven't played any of the beta, but from people who've played the Horde side of the beta, basically say at some point, Gunnar challenges Durotan to a duel for the position of chieftain of the Frostwolf clan, and basically Gunnar wins, but Durotan's like, if you want this, you're going to have to kill me, and he can't bring himself to kill his brother, and then at the end of the cinematic, it seems like that's the touching moment when Gunnar refers to Durotan as chieftain. That's supposed to be the big touching moment, because he finally accepts his brother as the chieftain of the Frostwolf clan. So that seemed to be that seems to be the big thing there. The big emotional moment, I guess. But moving on to the not Frostfire Ridge, Shadow Moon Valley. This is where the good stuff was, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So the Naru. Okay, so basically, Draenei and humans both share religion in the light. Basically, it's the Judeo-Christian analog religion in Warcraft. It's called the light. But humans tend to worship a kind of ambiguous notion of the light, whereas the Draenei, being aliens, have had contact with the Naru, who are physical manifestations of the light. And so the Naru, being light, they can also be reversed into shadow. And apparently, again, I haven't played the beta from what I gather, Mayor Zuul, who is the main Iron Horde bad guy in Shadow Moon Valley, has taken a Naru and has drained it of its light, making it a dark Naru. And he calls it the Dark Star, and he's going to use it to rain death and destruction upon the Draenei in Shadow Moon Valley.
Oh no.
Now, this cinematic did something really cool, in my opinion, because when we first heard the news that Valen was going to die, a lot of people were pissed, and I was one of those people. But this cinematic makes me okay with it, just because, in my opinion, this cinematic handles the death of Valen very well.
It does. It gives it some meaning, and it also answered the most obvious, at least to me, it seemed to answer the most obvious question that I had when I heard Valen was, getting killed off. Mm-hmm. Well, who the fuck is going to succeed him? and it seems to be Uriel.
He kind of passes the matrix of leadership onto her.
Yeah, he
the
gives,
Draenei matrix of leadership.
Yeah, the Valen is prophet of the Draenei. He's got this like weird little fucking symbol on his forehead.
It's the gift of the Naru, I think is what it's called.
Oh, okay.
It's some sort of higher. It basically connects him to the Naru directly, I think, is what it is.
Gotcha. Well, in any event, whatever the hell it is, he puts it on Uriel's head right before he bites the big one. So that kind of at least somewhat seems to answer that. I mean, to me at least.
He's either passing the matrix of leadership, or as you said, we're going to have Warlords of Draenor 2 search for Valen.
Yeah. I am and always will be your friend.
You know, where he was basically doing to Uriel what Spock did to Bones there, where he kind of like sticks his brain in him.
Yeah, remember.
So, but yeah, Valen, passes the Matrix leadership onto Uriel. Then he steps into the swirling vortex of dark energy and kind of infuses it with his own, light. And Valen sacrifices himself to purify the Naru and save the day there.
Yeah.
Moving on from that is what, in my opinion, my favorite.
Definitely.
Which is the Battle of Shatrath finale. Basically, Shatrath is the most holy city for the Draenei on Draenor. And it was the neutral capital in Burning Crusade, which took place on the burnt-out husks of Draenor called Outland in our main universe. Whereas this is going to an alternate universe, so Shatrath and Draenor still very much intact, but the Iron Horde are besieging it. Iron Horde, of course, led by the most badass orc, Blackhand, in this particular offensive.
His shirt's on fire.
He's trying to seize Draenor. He's trying to seize Shatrath, and it's interesting because earlier in the quest chain that leads up to the cinematic, he actually kills Orgrim Doomhammer, which is a nice change to the way the main universe shook up, where after sacking Stormwind, Doomhammer kills Blackhand to become War Chief. So it seems that Blackhand gets his revenge via alternate realities this time around. But anyway, this cinematic. And here's where the Matrix of Leadership thing gets really funny, because I'm convinced now that they're turning the Draenei into Autobots. Because Marad, the main Draenei paladin, who kind of accompanies us to Draenor, he dies. And again, we knew he had died, and this is a cinematic that sort of, after seeing it, gave his death meaning.
Yeah.
But when he's dying, he seems to have used his last bit of energy to protect Uriel on an exploding Iron Horde battleship that Blackhand is also on. And before he dies, Marad tells Uriel, "In the light, we are all one." Which, anyone who has seen the 1986 animated Transformers movie, when Optimus Prime dies, he says, "Till all are one." So... And it should be noted that, Chief Blizzard creative guy Chris Metzen does write for IDW's Transformers comic series.
And to kind of seal the deal there, when as Murad dies, Draenei's eyes are normally kind of glowy. Mm-hmm. And as he dies, his eyes just kind of, the light just kind of goes dim. Mm-hmm. Just like Optimus Prime.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. But, again, this is my favorite one because it had some kick-ass action. It had my favorite orc character in Blackhand. Blackhand apparently decides that he is going to torture Duratan for shiggles at this point.
Because... who wouldn't want to?
I mean, I assume he's just punishing him for inflicting thrall on the world.
I like to think so.
And so, Blackhand, at that point, immediately becomes the audience viewpoint character. And we'll get to thrall in a bit. But, he drops his lava hammer on Duratan's chest. It was like, you fucking suck.
Yeah, and just kind of like lets it lay there and just kind of brands him with it.
Yeah. But then, Yor-El gets his attention. Yor-El wants revenge because apparently Black Hand's the one who kills Murad. And, again, this is really cool because as Black Hand's sort of approaching, Yor-El, she kind of does she uses redemption, I think, or lay on hands or some healing ability to Duratan.
Yeah, I couldn't tell which one exactly. I didn't recall, but I was too distracted by the fact that she popped Avenging Wrath.
Well, yeah, she pops Avenging Wrath because what happens is she heals basically Duratan, using the power of the light. And then when Black Hand grabs her by the neck, Duratan, who is now, fully, he's at full health now, he's healthy, he tosses her his axe, and she immediately goes into Avenging Wrath, and you see the angel wings pop out, the light-infused angel wings pop out, and she just drives that into the guy's neck.
Yeah.
But I think you were saying that you wanted a Star Trek reference when Black Hand was holding her by the throat, like, I've got your gun.
Yeah, because it's like, Black Hand's got Uriel up by the throat, and in the background you see Duratan slowly standing up, except Black Hand doesn't see him. And I just kept expecting Uriel to be like, look behind you.
But no, she just sees the Duratan standing up and she's like, together. And then he throws her the axe. She goes into Avenging Wrath mode. And again, it's really cool, to see, characters in the cinematic do what, your character can do. It's a really cool thing. It helps bridge sort of the cinematic and the game in a way that had been lacking, perhaps due to technical difficulties, but technical limitations. But it really helped bring the two sides, kind of the lore and the gameplay, together in a nice way, I thought. And going from that, Khadgar, first Black Hand has his awesome line where he just yells, "You're all going to die!" And then Uriel has the awesome action movie comeback where she's like, "No, just you." And then Khadgar teleports both her and Duratan off the ship, and then fires an Iron Star at the ship, blowing it up. And in another action movie cliche, Black Hand leaps off of the exploding ship, all action movie-esque. And of course he survives because he's got to survive to be the raid boss in Black Rock Foundry. But all of this sort of led me to believe that this was basically cinematic special guest director Michael Bay.
Pretty much.
It basically ends with this giant battleship exploding as this orc, leaps off like he's fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger in True Lies. It really kind of indulged itself there. But you know what? I can dig it. But let's talk to the one that I think a lot of people wanted to see.
Yeah.
And
you mean the one where it seems like Thrall's in the feminine hygiene product commercial at the beginning?
Well, okay, so Garrosh Hellscream was the main villain of Mists of Pandaria. You could make an argument that he was the villain of Cataclysm too. And so people have kind of wanted to see him die for a while. At the end of Mists of Pandaria, he doesn't die. He stands on trial. The trial is depicted in a book in which he escapes at the end. So people asked at BlizzCon, is Garrosh going to be the final raid boss in Pandaria as well? And the answer was no. He plays a key part in setting the Warlords of Draenor expansion in motion, but he's not going to be the final boss. He's going to die before then. We found out through the beta that Thrall kills him in Nagrand, being the homeland of Garrosh's home clan, the Warsong. So the big thing that a lot of fans wanted to know was, well, how did he die? Because, of course, even though you play the beta, the cinematic's missing. So when they released these cinematics, people were like, oh, we want to see how Garrosh dies. Because, again, this is a character whose death people had sort of been waiting for a long time. And it starts off with Thrall walking through a field as the sort of serene music plays.
Some days, I don't feel so fresh.
Well, I didn't think feminine hygiene. My first reaction was, oh god, it's finally happening. Chris Metzen's fantasies have manifested themselves in-game.
That, or an prescription allergy meds commercial.
Where it's just like Thrall frolicking through a field, and it's like...
Yeah.
And it's like,
yeah.
Get relief today.
Trixaplan. Ask your doctor. May cause spontaneous combustion, diarrhea, and headaches.
But, Thrall's walking through the serene field, and then Garrosh kind of shows up. And, again, like, a lot of people are upset about Thrall being the one to do it. People on the Alliance side are pissed off that a Horde character gets to off the guy who basically declared war on the Alliance. And then on the other side, even some Horde fans are, Horde fans who are tired of Thrall are like, really, did we have to do Thrall again? But I don't mind Thrall being the one to do it, more or less, because, well, first of all, if it was Varian would have kicked Garrosh's ass. And it wouldn't have been nearly as, I guess, suspenseful a cinematic. In the three times previous when Garrosh and Varian threw down, Varian is like 3-0. Like, Garrosh cannot beat Varian, so. I understand why they chose Thrall. And again, because, Thrall was the one who made Garrosh War Chief of the Horde in the first place, so I can understand the whole kind of making your mistakes right thing. I was just curious, where did you fall on that? Were you pissed off that Thrall was, in fact, the one who did the deed?
I wasn't pissed off. I mean, I get it from a storytelling standpoint that it was kind of his monster that he created, and so they felt like he had to put an end to it. Mm-hmm. I get that. And I'm not going to bitch too much about it. I personally would have preferred to have seen Ren do it.
I would have preferred Jaina, actually.
Yeah, or Jaina.
Well, he nuked her city.
Yeah. That would have been, Jaina actually would be a really good choice. Just something, there for the Alliance. Of course, I mean, Uriel is badass and everything, but we've lost 2 people. Mm-hmm. And the patch hasn't even hit yet. Well, so a little more Alliance love would have been nice, but I'm not going to scream and bitch about it because from a storytelling standpoint, yeah, it does make sense to have Thrall kill him.
It would have been fun. It would have been funny if it was just Garrosh standing in a field, like minding his own business, and then you see the shadow, and then he looks up, and it's Dalaran above it, and he just looks up, and he's like, shit, and then like this like arcane beam fires down from it, and then it shows like Jane in the Violet Citadel. And she's just like a bitch. But no, we get Thrall and Garrosh throwing down. And this cinematic only confirmed what we had known from in-game events before, that Thrall's melee skills are shit.
They really are.
Because, Garrosh beats him pretty handily, but what I found interesting was that, look, I am not a Garrosh fan by any stretch of the imagination. I kind of think he's a D-bag. But everything he said to Thrall in that cinematic, I kind of agreed with.
How so?
When he said, like, okay, Thrall's whole thing at the end, right before he does the deed and offs Garrosh, Thrall's like, you chose your own path, like, you can't blame me for your mistakes. But all of Garrosh's points seemed fair. Like, basically, Garrosh has a bit of a breakdown here during this fight, because Thrall's like, you betrayed the Horde. And Garrosh kind of freaks out, and he's like, you're the one who made me War Chief. You're the one who left me to pick up your pieces, And it's like, and you have the gall to tell me I failed you? No, you failed me. And I was just like, he's right. Thrall really, well, first of all, he should have known better than to appoint, the warmongering sociopath as war chief. And secondly, he kind of didn't guide Garrosh. I mean, like, he basically names Garrosh war chief, and then he's like, go into the maelstrom, catch you later. And he just sort of leaves Garrosh to his own devices. And it's sort of like, if nothing else, Thrall is responsible for kind of the war chief and the person that Garrosh became. And I thought it was kind of a cop-out, honestly, that Thrall was like, no, you chose your own path. And it's like, no, Thrall's not to blame for the shit Garrosh did, but he's not innocent in all of it either. And I thought it was really interesting just to see, like, Garrosh just kind of unload on Thrall. Basically, like, you left me with your problems, and I did what I thought was right. And obviously I don't think Garrosh was in the right, but I sort of understand where he's coming from when he's saying Thrall, is not innocent in all of this.
Yeah, Thrall's just, God.
But
I'm going to spare everyone from yet another Thrall rant.
But moving on from that, Garrosh has this freak out. He's like saying, you left me, you failed me, and then he like throws Thrall down, and then he goes to Thrall, like, you never had the strength of a warrior. And Thrall's like, my strength is all around me. And of course, Thrall is a shaman, so he uses the elements to basically ruffle stomp Garrosh pretty easily, actually. Makes me wonder why he didn't just do that in the first place. Kind of saved himself an ass kicking. But he smacks him around with fire and wind, and then a giant hand of earth raises up and clutches Garrosh in place as Thrall brings down a bolt of lightning. Killing Garrosh. And then it ends kind of a very serious and sad scene where it's just this really solemn music playing as Thrall just sort of walks away with like a limp Garrosh hell scream in the foreground. But the main thing I took away from this, and that a lot of people online who play shamans brought up, was that in the Dark Portal intro and in the Shatner finale, we see paladins using moves that you can do as a paladin in game. You can use Avenging Wrath, you can bubble, you can use Redemption and Lay on Hands. But some guy who plays a shaman on one of the message boards was like, where's my giant earth hand I can use to AoE fools? Huh?
I know, right?
But no, you don't. I'm sorry, shaman players, you don't get the awesome Earth Hand and Lightning Bolt Death Ray because only Thrall gets that, because Thrall is the best shaman who ever shamaned.
Or something like that. Yeah, totally.
But I guess the thing to ask you is, as an Alliance player, did you feel satisfied with Garrosh's death?
More satisfied that he was dead.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much that the death itself really brought me any satisfaction. I didn't feel that it was ironic or fitting or fulfilling or anything like that. It more or less gave me the feeling of, okay, good, now he's fucking dead and we can get on with things.
So
kind of a now it's over with feeling more than a yeah, that was awesome kind of a thing. No, the manner of death itself did nothing for me. I really didn't care one way or the other.
Mm-hmm. You do know what the quest is called, though, where that cinematic takes place?
No.
You're gonna facepalm when I tell you this. It's called Justice for Thrall.
And all I have is beer.
See,
No
the thing
liquor.
is, I was listening to another podcast. I was listening to the But Wait, There's Lore podcast, and they were talking about this. And one of the contributors on that show was saying that, you know, this is it for Thrall. Like, there's no more story for him after this. Like, he's righted his wrong with Garrosh. That's it. He was the Horde voice on the show, and his whole thing was, I know you're all sick of Thrall, but it's okay, because after this expansion, like, he's not going to be a focus anymore, because this was the end of his story. He's gone back in time, he's righted his wrong with Garrosh, he's met his dad, so he's dealt with his daddy issues, and so, you know, the argument was, just put up with one more Thrall wank expansion because he's done after this. So I have to ask you, do you believe that Thrall is going to play a reduced role from here on out?
No.
I mean, I tend to agree. Okay, here's the thing. I like the IDW Transformers comics, Monstrosity and Autocracy, the ones that Chris Metzen writes on. Generally speaking, I think Chris Metzen is a creative guy. I think he's a good storyteller. But it's become abundantly clear that Thrall is his self-insert character, and it's become a detriment to the franchise. And again, I'm gonna say, like Jack, I'm gonna save y'all another Thrall sucks rant, but I don't think this is the end, because if you follow it, logically, his story should have ended after Cataclysm. But it didn't. So I think they'll find another excuse to drag him back out again, in my opinion.
I mean, if it didn't, this expansion and its storyline where Thrall meets his daddy and kills Garrosh, it should pretty much close out his character arc pretty neatly. Yeah, and if not by those things, then for sure, definitely, when Thrall carries baby Thrall through the portal at the end.
As angels sing. Yeah,
but I don't think it is. I think Chris Metzen has a problem. I think.
Well, I can't remember if I actually shared this on show. I know I told you off when we weren't recording. I can't actually remember if I said it on the show or not. That's sort of the problem, is that our shows are so like our conversations that when I try to think of what I've said on show, I have trouble kind of separating it from just us bullshitting.
Yeah, I have that issue too.
But the fan nickname for Thrall is Green Jesus. And that is actually more true than you'd think, because Thrall is the name that humans gave him. He was an orc raised by humans. Thrall's birth name is Goel. Now, Goel is for the longest time, Chris Metzen is a noted Dragon Ball and Superman fan. So for a long time, people thought that Goel was just Goku and Kal-El merged together. And that seemed like a good theory, except for the fact that Goel is actually a Hebrew word. It is an actual Hebrew word, and it means redeemer. And what religious figure is sometimes referred to in religious scripture as the redeemer? Jesus. Jesus, of course, being Jewish and coming from a Jewish culture, if anyone called Jesus the redeemer in his lifetime, then they would have called him Goel. So, Thrall is literally Jesus at this point.
Damn it, Chris Metzen.
Honestly, I think you're right. There's a problem. There needs to be an intervention at Blizzard's HQ where, they have the counselor guide Chris Metzen's hand as he deletes the Thrall porn file on his computer.
I mean, someone really needs to, I don't know, put a stop to this. I mean, I'll give it to Linda Draenor. I mean, what will I do after that if it's not resolved? Well, probably nothing except whine a lot more about it than I am now. But I mean, logically, this should be the end of Thrall's major story arc.
Yeah, I mean,
he's pretty much coming full circle. He's getting all of his ends tied up. All this other bullshit. This should be the end.
He's dealt with his crippling daddy issues. He got to meet his dad. Good for him.
Yeah, killed his arch nemesis. All this other bollocks, and this should be the end of it.
I mean, he's married. He's married in the lore. He's married to Agra, who Agra, by the way, is a much more interesting character than him. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But he's married to Agra, and they have a kid. So,
yeah.
God, let him go off. And you know what? If they still want to tell Thrall stories, the next, they had the burdens of Emperor Shao Hao, and then they follow that up with Lords of War. If they want to keep doing Thrall stories, keep him out of the game, but do Thrall's home life, short story where it's like Thrall going to soccer practice or something. I don't know. Do that. Show us what Thrall's up to in his retirement, where he's just like, yep, so these are the shelves I made for the garage. They're pretty sturdy.
Let's let Thrall retire to like a fucking timeshare in Grizzly Hills, and where the only time we see him is when he's doing some kind of like documentary about the garage war or some shit like that. And let's move on to a more interesting character like anybody. Murky the Murloc. I don't give a fuck, just not Thrall.
I'm hoping, actually, that we get more Varian, honestly, because I kind of thought Varian's character was going in some cool places in Pandaria, and I'd like to see more of him in Draenor. And apparently he is going to show up in 6.1, so that's cool.
Of course, now I say any other character, now watch. They'll start focusing on Anduin.
See, here's the thing. I think there's potential for Anduin. I think they haven't realized it yet, but I think there's potential because he's a priest, right? Anduin, that's his class, right? He's a priest. Well, do a thing where his naivete and his idealism basically bite him in the ass, and he realizes that he's got to toughen the fuck up and he becomes a paladin.
Never. That won't happen.
You don't think so?
Because that would be kind of cool, so it won't happen.
Like, do the storyline where we follow Anduin from naive, annoying little shit to, badass paladin. Let's see that story. Where he emerges from it kind of as like this hardened warrior of the light. Let's do that.
That would be cool. Again, I don't see it happening. But,
because it's so sad. Because he's actually named after Anduin Lothar, Varian Rin, when he was a kid, of course, going back to how this Warcraft conversation started. When Blackhand sacked Stormwind, Varian was I think he was 10 or 11 at the time. His father, King Lane, was killed. And the head of Stormwind's army, Anduin Lothar, basically took Varian and what refugees he could find and took them north to Lordaeron to start the Second War. And so in honor of Lothar's and Lothar was a badass warrior who led the Alliance to victory in the Second War. And in honor of Lothar's memory, Varian named his son Anduin. And so Anduin, named after this great warrior, is currently this annoying little
bitch.
Bitch.
Yeah, I believe that's the word you're looking for.
Yeah. It's like, come on. And Anduin Lothar really does deserve better, because so far he only has, one statue in the game, and it's only a matter of time before Tyrion Fordring finds it and puts his head on it.
Fucking Tyrion Fordring.
No, watch. They're gonna get rid of Thrall, and then Tyrion Fordring's gonna be the guy they focus on.
You know, I could almost handle that better at this point.
I just like how Tyrion Fordring's trolling of you has now crossed into completely different games.
Yeah. Okay, so some insight on that. I was playing a mod for Civilization 5, where you can actually play as different factions from World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
And so one of the factions is Argent Crusade.
Yes.
And I was playing as Stormwind. And it turns out, like, Argent Crusade, you know, spawns, the way the spawn points work and everything and the way the Empire is spread out, I ended up bordering the Argent Crusade. And next thing I know, this son of a bitch is taking my land and somehow clandestinely orchestrates for everyone else in the world to declare war on me at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking Tyrion Fordring is a fucking menace in any game in which he's present, even if it's not World of Warcraft. Fuck you, Tyrion Fordring. Fuck you.
Indeed, and with that, we're going to close out episode 33 of Basically a Geek Show. You can catch us on Twitter at A Geek Show. You can send us an email at basicallygeekshow@gmail.com, on Stitcher, Spreaker, YouTube, iTunes, basicallysportshow.com. For Jack, this is Mike, signing off.
Not everybody.